Ani bonjour, everybody. My name is Bailey Walkie. I'm the founder of Frayed Feathers and the host of the Frayed Feathers podcast. I support teams that create youth reconciliation strategies, and I have this podcast to inform youth responses across Canada. So I've been working with young people since I was 15 years old, and all the way from restorative justice to the public policy sector to even hip hop dancing. And so today I want to give an addition to the youngins out there who are really interested in youth reconciliation but don't really know how to approach a reconciliation advocate journey. And I think that me being a reconciliation strategist, I have an opportunity to make this journey more approachable. And I felt that this podcast, I can just kind of like break it down real quick. My goal today is efficiency, give you all the information in a very succinct and clear way. Let's get into it. Okay. So, the definition of advocacy, when you search it online, is public support for or recommendation of a particular cause or policy. So that's very broad. And basically, you're an advocate if you publicly support anything. Yeah, that's pretty much it. End of podcast. Peace. But, just like ogres and onions, there's layers to this. And not to be competitive about it by any means, but I want to categorize these levels or these like layers of advocacy into levels 1 to 3. All right. So these levels represent my interpretation, purely anecdotal, of effectiveness to influence social change in one's community. I kept it one's community, municipality, because like I don't want to get too crazy and like, if you're yeah, anyway. So I want to inform any listeners who are just starting their journey. I want to make this advocacy journey thing a lot more clear for people. I want to remove any sort of doubts about imposter syndrome and just create a clear pathway for someone to get involved in this community. Okay. So some of the caveats today. So none of these levels are paid positions because if you're being in a paid position, you will likely have expertise that goes beyond conventional knowledge. And conventional knowledge is what's available online and like what you can just kind of deduce and stuff like that. So, in cases like myself, for example, like I'm a policy analyst or I work as a policy analyst, and I do advocate type things all the time. But, you know, if we're, you know, if we're kind of considering my level of advocacy, metaphorically, I'm kind of reaching into the unknown to learn more stuff and then bring it into conventional knowledge, right? Because like I can have the time and resources to learn the best practices in supporting youth and implementing reconciliation. And then I can kind of bring that, kind of connect those pieces and bring a further understanding, right? But if you're not in a paid position, you're likely not going to be paid to do things like that. And so it wouldn't be natural to expect that from people. So that's why the levels are not in paid positions because, you have to work with what you got, and what you got is conventional knowledge, what's available online. Okay. So level 1, folks who are socially mindful but don't give it time, meaning like they don't look into other things other than just kind of like scrolling through social media or like the one-off kind of two-off conversations they have with their friends. And I think that a lot of people, especially young folks who are like very politically mindful, we consider like the social justice warrior type folks. I think a lot of them are kind of in this position of level 1 advocates, I would say, in that they are publicly supporting something, and that's amazing. I think we should still do that. But naturally, they're going to have like low reach because, they're just talking to their social networks, which is likely just a bunch of their peers. And, you know, they if their peers are socially inclined, or inclined to understand these things, socially inclined, that's funny. Then they're going to it's kind of going to be an echo chamber, right? Because, everyone's going to agree with you. Or if they don't have like that connection to social understanding like you do, because they're like your friends and family from like back home who like didn't really go on this journey with you or something like that. Well, you know, they're not really going to have the background to connect with what you're saying. And so naturally they're just going to kind of be like, "Oh, Okay, cool. Yeah, pollution is bad for sure, you know? And so anyway, I think one of the things that happens here for people who are like bystanders in in someone's advocacy journey online, being level one advocate, is that they're not paying you for your opinion, but they are paying with their time. And people's time is really valuable, And so like if you're somebody who is going to be posting online about things that you care about, but you're not like really educating yourself beyond like headlines and conversations you're having, like you don't look into research and just like read raw reports or raw data, I should say, from reports and stuff like that. Like I think it's going to be you're going to have a if you're going to take the advocacy journey like seriously, I think you're going to be better off spending your time doing something like that, you know what I mean? Like going to educate yourself further on these social topics. And, just naturally there's probably not going to be like community decision makers or government people like in your social media following. And if they are, like they're probably not looking at your social media for like a source of information. You know what I mean? So, like I just think that like that's why I would consider them level one because it's like you are doing advocacy work. I think it's important that people express themselves. That's like the whole point of social media and like, making yourself clear that like this is what you stand for. But after a while, you kind of have to consider like you're paying with your time to create these posts, and wouldn't it be great if you could get more out of your outputs by doing something like trying to get to level two advocacy? So to level up one's game. Sorry, my nose is so itchy right now. So to level up one's game, I would recommend looking into like some online communities of people like yourself who enjoy learning about reconciliation and then keeping up with news developments. So, these sorts of conversations you have with people in these communities are going to give you a much stronger picture of the landscape in a lot faster of a time. They're just like, some people are going to be focused on like what's happening in the northern part of your province, and then some people in the interior part, and then some people in the lower part of your province, and learning what's happening in the rivers, what's happening in the big lakes, what's happening in the ocean, you know what I mean? Like you're gonna have like a much clearer opportunity to kind of like pick and choose what interests you the most. And then also, just reading these things kind of like one off here and there, like you'll kind of get over the period of time, just being part of the community, seeing headline developments about these, like all these different items, you're going to get a much clearer picture of what reconciliation means for your province, your community, your nation, and then your country. And, you're going to challenge your own thinking a lot while being connected who are further in the journey than like they're going to put you on a path to increase your knowledge, right? Like they're gonna see like what you're saying, and they're gonna be like, oh yeah, like like what you're saying is really cool. I think you should check this book out, this article, watch this video. It talks all about this stuff that you're interested in, and then boom, now you've gone from having a vested interest in learning about this stuff to now having like the actual discourse, like the language to talk about a challenge that you're experiencing. And then lastly, there might be people in there providing commentary on political developments. And so your brain is just gonna grow so much, like wrinkles for days. So that is how you get to a level two advocate. But a level two advocate to me is somebody who reads past the headlines and follows the stories outside of the news. So, these people are likely maybe like naturally found themselves in a position of being a level two advocate because they have a vested interest in what's happening. Maybe it's like in their local community, they are not only reading the developments that happen from the province, but they're also reading the local newspapers. They're following like the people involved in the situation, like leading the indigenous part of it. Like they're following them on social media, watching their posts, keeping updated on that. They're likely to subscribe to newsletters to this relevant advocacy area, and their peer group or online community is probably talking about this stuff in detail, and they're going to have a stronger idea of how of future events because they probably have so much context of what's happened in the past, right? Like just in following these people, right? Like, oh, we're gonna get a status quo response from the government, and then the indigenous project leads are probably gonna react this way because this is how they consistently have to respond to government in this way, and like there now, here you go, just coming into the conversation now as a young person and like being like, oh, okay, there's actually like history here for me to learn about this thing. And it's not that like this thing just started happening and this and that, whatever, you know what I mean? And so like you kind of get onboarded into something that you had previously thought like was just that you had just gotten introduced to, you know what I mean? So it's accelerating that journey for you. And that's what makes you a level 2 advocate, right? Like it's just there's so much more clear education from the people around you in being part of these like online communities and stuff, right? I don't know what's going on with my nose, but oh my goodness, bro, it is so itchy. Anyway, it's at this level that you start hearing like really educated opinions about things. But in my opinion, there's not much cause for people to challenge each other. Like if you both accept the same set of facts, but you come to a different conclusion, I mean, congratulations, you're two just smart people. That's just like what happens, right? But the point is like if you're in an online community, like I don't really have a vested interest to like talk to you to the point of finding a resolution or like the middle ground or like what would be a great way for us to resolve this, because we're not getting paid to do this. We would kind of just agree to disagree and then we'd move on with our lives. And it's the same thing if even if you found people in person in your own community who are having these conversations, you know, it's the same thing. Like people are going to feel strongly in which way, whichever, but like you're not paid to work with them to find a resolution between your two opinions. So, I feel like we can kind of find ourselves in positions where we find really educated advocates about the facts, but they've not been in positions where they've had to like question themselves critically or think about like the opposition in a way that they would have to kind of find a middle ground or something like that. And so that's like a whole being relational while being advocate is like a very, very powerful skill, because advocacy is not about pointing the finger and like telling people that they're doing a bad job. I mean, that can be part of it, but it's about creating a solution that's going to be beneficial for everybody in the thing, right? Like we can't become bullies in being advocates, right? That's not how advocacy works. It's also about working with the oppressors to reconcile. That is the whole point of youth reconciliation. So you need to be legit about your opinion and working through it. Okay. So level 3, I think that these people are folks who get involved in their local initiatives, whether it be politically or at a nonprofit, or they volunteer there at some in some which way to address like a youth challenge. You know what I mean? A youth social challenge. And this is still like not a paid position. It's volunteering your time, but you're volunteering your time so that you can be in a position to talk to professionals about this situation. Like you don't need to have money or expertise to volunteer your time, but you will gain so much understanding if you're able to talk with people about this kind of stuff. So anyway, so having a strong understanding of social challenges and the leadership of these groups will greatly increase the quality of the discussions, excuse me, you're going to have with the hired staff of these initiatives, right? Like just if you go to a nonprofit and you have like a solution for a social challenge, like experiencing youth homelessness or something, then, just talking it out with somebody who supports people who are experiencing homelessness, you're going to know pretty quickly if that's like a good idea or not. And like, it's not about like, hey, let me tell you what you're doing wrong. It's about like, hey, like I have this idea. Like, how does this sound to you? Like, I don't really know how this sounds. Like, just tell me how it is. And I think people are going to be more than happy. The fact that you were like a level 2 advocate and you're coming to volunteer your time, like they're like, oh my God, this is amazing. You know what I mean? Because a lot of people who volunteer their time, they're volunteering their time because like they just feel it's a good thing to do. They're not like super educated on like the complex solutions one would have to create in order to like see people not experiencing homelessness in their community. They're just like, oh, a food drive for people experiencing homelessness. Yeah, I'll volunteer for that. Why not? You know what I mean? That seems like a good thing, good cause to spend some time with kids and, talk to people in my community, you know, and that's kind of it. You know what I mean? So if you're somebody who is going to do that, dedicate your time to this food drive, but then also you want to talk about like food scarcity and food security with some of the staff members, then they're going to be like, "Oh yeah, cool, this is awesome. Let's have a chat." And so that's what I mean. Like being a level 3 advocate is about like testing your ideas in community, with people who actually know what the heck they're talking about. And so anyway, in level 1, you're in a position where like most of your opinions are not thought out completely because you're just kind of agreeing with other people's opinions. Level 2, you're refining your opinions and learning more about things. And then level 3, you're testing that in um like on a very small scale, in like, kind of picking the brains of the people who would understand if your solution has been implemented at like a high scale or not, and like can reasonably give you a analysis, I guess, of like how it matches up to like best practices or something like that. So the fact that you even know what's going on is awesome, and like, people are going to be like very pleasant to you anyway. So, I think just go for it. If you're feeling kind of weird, like, oh, I'm going to a thing to like learn about stuff. Anyway, just go for it. This is what I would recommend if you wanted to like really be take your advocacy journey very seriously. And then you'll begin to learn so much about the systems and these organizations, and what their limitations are. And then, so you're going to hear about what has been tried and what you could move forward on. And I think that many people that do take this on, like go to try to volunteer their time and talk to people, are going to be really surprised about how the conventional understanding of the public sector, or I shouldn't say the public sector, but just like any sector, is actually like significantly more complex. Not it's not just about like the quality of a service or a proposal. It's also about the buy-in from um, the people like meaning like the community members, local politicians, business leaders, etc. And more often than not, the peeps you need to be talking to or like should be present in these conversations are just not there, and that's kind of like half the challenge with doing anything, right? It's about like getting the right audience there. So you might have a good idea, but you don't have the um, strategy to get the right people in the conversation in order for you to move forward on your solution, right? And you wouldn't really know that unless you went and talked to somebody who's tried to do things like this before, right? And so it'll illuminate a lot of barriers and identify what solutions are actually viable through the system that you want to create this change about. You know what I mean? Like that's like the whole point of being an advocate. And so like it's kind of weird, like when I was a teen, I used to talk about reconciliation like only being sovereignty. You know what I mean? Like give us the land back, right? And then like we'll govern ourselves and rebuild our communities, and like we're gonna kill it. You know what I mean? But now working as a policy analyst, like my ideas have become like a lot more grand, um, and or sorry, have become a lot less grand, I should say. Even though I still love the idea of sovereignty and like let's do that, woo woo, you know what I'm saying? But I've learned that it was just like I learned like very practical things, you know what I mean? Like even being an indigenous person in post secondary, like you're a statistical anomaly, and so to expect like a bunch of highly educated indigenous people to come in and just be able to take over these like huge assets and be able to govern ourselves in the colonial system, like it takes education to work in the colonial system, like it's not as simple as just being like here's sovereignty, you can govern yourselves. We need to put ourselves in a position where we're actually able to take on these things and manage them to a high degree, right? Like there's so many things just beyond like First Nations and colonial governments that there's problems of, as far as like, just like the Canadian government system not recognizing hereditary chiefs and like requiring First Nations to go through electoral processes that, are not aligned with their systems of leadership and things like this, and so like for me, like being a teenager or being even a young kid, being like, oh yeah, sovereignty, you know what I mean? Like, but now being a policy analyst, understanding the whole sector, it's like, oh, okay, there's actually like really, it would take a really long time for us to get to a point where everybody would be okay with moving forward on sovereignty, right? It's not like as simple as like just flicking the fingers, right? And that's what I thought it was whenever I was a kid, because you just don't know. Like if you've not talked to somebody who works in the field that you're interested in reconciling, then how the heck are you going to know that sovereignty is not like an option? You know what I mean? And so anyway, if you're really serious about taking on an advocacy journey and getting involved in your community, I think that you should consider like how you can be move from like a level 1, 2, or 3 advocate. My phone is ringing. LOL. But anyway, and learn about the visions and systems of the organizations and businesses in your community who are doing reconciliation work, because you could probably get involved in those initiatives, just committing your time, and maybe even find yourself in a paid position where one you'd be able to kind of like move forward on some of these like um pre-exposed solutions you created in your brain, you know what I mean? And so anyway, I just think that there is an unresponsive system in government that is really resilient to change, and reconciliation is a massive change. And so in learning about why the government system is unresponsive, that will give us a clear opportunity to create streamlined pathways to make it responsive. You know what I mean? Like it is a system. And if you consider something like coding, hacking is really just making a system work in the which way you want it to work. And so, that's essentially what we're doing with reconciliation. We're taking a system that doesn't want to be reconciled in colonization, and or that is colonial, and we're going to make it work in the way that we want to, but we need to understand the system. That is the whole point of it. And so you only understand the system by um, engaging online, aka with people who know the system, educating yourself, and then get out there, actually try to implement these things, talk about these things with people who care about these conversations, and you will learn so much. Okay, so that's all for me, y'all. Um, I want you to connect with me on LinkedIn and look at the newsletter that I do every 2 weeks. It's pretty sick. And I'm working on my website right now, so I'm pretty excited about that. I'll catch y'all later. Peace.